Alright, first things first, sidechain compression. This is that pumping sound you hear a lot in dance music when a synth, usually a bass or a pad, will duck down in volume every time the kick drum hits. So first thing we need, as you may have guessed, is a compressor. Right click, create, M-class compressor. Let's bring that up just so we can see the signal chain flow. And we've added this in after the maximizer, just so the maximizer doesn't negate any of the volume changes with its soft clip limity goodness. And then let's link it to the drums. But before we move it to the drums though, let's hit tab and drag this sidechain in to the two devices part of the combinator. This means that we'll be linking to the combinator rather than the compressor itself, so you can save this combinator as a patch if you want to with this little button here on the front, and use it again and again without wondering where it was in the device you had to apply the sidechain compression. Just keeps things tidy. Now the kick drum signal will go into this combi input here. Remember that combinators can be used as effects devices as well. That's essentially what the mastering suite is. So yeah, now the drums. Fortunately, the kick and the snare hit on the same beat, so we don't have to isolate the kick drum. So scroll up to the mixer and then right click, create a Spider Audio merger and splitter. Now we're going to use an auxiliary output to feed the signal into the splitter, since we'll be sidechaining more than just one sound in this song. So if we hit tab, send out one of the mixer, go to the input of the splitter, and then send the first splitter output to the combi input of the bass combinator down here. Now it might sound complicated, but it's really not. Kind of like Mormonism, all that fine print, but when it comes down to it, apparently we've got 3 heavens, so there's nothing to worry about. Now that's a religion. Anyway, now onto the front panel of the mixer, bring the drums aux send all the way up to full, just for that one we sent there, number 1. And if we unsolo the bass, which I've brought down in volume a little bit, we should see this virtual red LED light up when we play the kick drum because it's now linked into the splitter. There you could see as soon as that kick drum started, that LED came on. Then back down in the bass, let's set up this compressor. Turn the ratio to full, so it squashes the crap out of the sound, then bring the threshold down to just below 1/2. Bring that bass a little bit so you can hear it. This just means that anything above minus 21 decibels will just be squashed to within an inch of its life. Some final tidying up, bring that attack all the way down, just so the squashing is instant, and the input gain, bring that up a few notches. Just to get an even more pronounced squashing effect, and you can see that's really got a nice pump going. So, there's the sidechain. Alright, high five! Don't break your monitor trying that. Next up is the lead bass synth mashup. You find this kind of sound a lot in prog and electro house particularly. It works really well for drops. Now we're going to add this in 2 places. One in an existing instance of Thor, the central one that we made first, and another in an entirely separate instance. The first sound will be kind of distorted and mangled in with the bass sound because of having all these sounds squeezed out of one instance of Thor, and then the second will be a lot cleaner and purer, but not too clean and pure. This is a dirty bass after all. Having these 2 types of sound will allow us more control with the level of the lead sitting in the bass sound. Before I start, you can just make a separate combinator entirely, but I think this way you get a cool tonality that you can't get from a separate instance anywhere near as easily. So, in Thor 1, if we open it up, turn on this 3rd oscillator to analog, on square wave with the pulse width on mid, so it is a square rather than a pulse wave, take it a couple of octaves up, and then run it through the path without the shaper on. Now if we take a quick listen, nothing too special yet, just a bit of extra tone, but if we turn up the semitone knob here, 4 notches, listen to how awesomely dancey it becomes. This just means that the oscillator is 4 semitones above the note being played, so it's making a 2-note chord with the bass every time you play a note. Cool, huh? You have to be careful about the rest of the melody in a song if you're going to use this technique though, since sometimes it can really clash with the key you're in. But if you have a minimalistic genre like this, it can be a brilliant sound. So we have our dirtied tone. Next, we're going to make another Thor instance. Initialize, open it up. So let's make 3 analog oscillators. First one on a square, second one on a saw, third one on a square. And there is a reason for this order. I'll explain that in a second. Now run oscillators 1 and 3 through into the filter, which we'll actually get rid of. But not you, oscillator 2. We have special plans for you. Ahem. Full sustain, and knock oscillator 1 up 3 octaves. Oscillator 2 up 4 octaves. And oscillator 3 up 2 octaves. Now if we take a listen, this is a bit bland at the moment, even for our so-called clean tone. So to mangle things up, let's take the AM from oscillator 2 slider here up to full. Now if we add in the magic semitone change up 4 on both oscillator 1 and 3, hear the difference without the AM and with it. I freaking love this sound. AM stands for Amplitude Modulation, otherwise known as ring modulation, where more frequencies are added in by summing and finding the difference between the two waves. I told you maths was fun. Et voila! Sweet tonal goodness. Let's mix it in. And then you have your lead bass synth. Well, it's almost there. We don't want this sound all the time. It's nice to switch from the bass to the lead bass in the drops. So we're going to set up the combinator with a button that can turn it on and off. So show the programmer. And for the line mixer 1, button 1, we're going to set the channel mute for the instance of Thor that we just created, which is number 4. Min 1, max 0. So that sorts out the clean tone. Then for the dirty tone, select Thor 1, and for button 1, select mixer, oscillator 3 to filter to enable, with min 0 and max 1. Now just to test that, we're going to right click button 1, edit automation, and draw in some automation for it. Just with the pen tool, just draw it in there. If we hit Q to go back to the cursor, double click it to open it up, and draw us just one dot at the top so it's fully on at that point. And make sure as well, if we hit edit mode, that this default static value is down at 0. It might be at 1 for you. So if we take a listen, starts off with our bass sound, then when the button hits, voila, job done. So join me in part 3 for the final touch of the simple sidechained sub bass.